Red Bull just lost over 1 full second per lap, and the reason behind it is so serious, it could end their entire era of dominance. Because this isn't just a slow car. This is a chassis disaster. A car built with a 60-year-old wind tunnel that doesn't match reality. A machine up to 20 kilograms overweight. And a design so broken, even the team admits they don't fully understand what's failing. Max Verstappen called it impossible to drive. A rookie from their own junior team knocked him out in qualifying. 32 seconds lost in a single race. And the most dominant team in modern Formula One is now being called the worst Red Bull in over a decade. This is not a performance drop. This is a collapse. And what you're about to hear reveals how one critical mistake, at the heart of the RB22, triggered a crisis that could change everything. At first, Red Bull didn't panic. They couldn't. Because what they were seeing didn't make sense. You don't go from total dominance to losing 1 full second per lap overnight. That doesn't happen in Formula One. Not without something going very wrong. So in those first sessions, they treated it like a normal issue. Setup, balance, fine-tuning. The kind of problems they had solved for years. Because that's what dominant teams do. They adjust and they recover. But this time, nothing came back. Melbourne was the first warning. Not just the lap time, but the behavior. The RB22 didn't feel like a Red Bull. It didn't rotate properly. It didn't hold stability through corners. It didn't give the driver confidence. And still, they believed it was something small. Something fixable. Until they saw something that should never happen. Their own junior team, faster. Same engine. Less experience. Less resources. And yet, half a second ahead. That's not a setup issue. That's a structural problem. And that's when the internal alarm started. Because in Formula One, when two cars share the same power unit, the difference comes from one place. The chassis. And suddenly, everything pointed there. Because the RB22 wasn't just slow. It was inefficient. Heavy. Up to 20 kilograms over the minimum weight. That alone explains a huge part of the deficit. Before aerodynamics. Before balance. The car was already compromised. But it gets worse. Because that weight wasn't placed correctly. To meet regulations, the team had to add ballast in the wrong areas. Which destroyed the balance. Front end weak in slow corners. Rear unstable in high speed. A car that changes personality every corner. And that's exactly what Verstappen felt. Not just a lack of speed. A lack of control. Because in Formula One, confidence is everything. You brake later when you trust the car. You carry more speed when you trust the rear. You attack when you know what the car will do. But with the RB22, that trust was gone. Corner entry, understeer. Mid-corner, instability. Corner exit, unpredictable traction. And at high speed, a sudden shift that no driver can anticipate. That's not just difficult. That's unmanageable. And when Verstappen said it was impossible to drive, he wasn't frustrated. He was describing a car that doesn't behave the same way twice. And that's the moment everything changes inside a team. Because now, you're not fixing performance. You're questioning the entire concept. And that's exactly what started happening after Australia. Because engineers began comparing something critical. What the data predicted. And what the track delivered. And the gap between those two was massive. Because on the screen, the RB22 was competitive. Balanced. Fast. But on track, it wasn't any of those things. And that leads to the most dangerous failure in Formula One. A correlation problem. The car you design is not the car you race. And when that happens, everything breaks. Because now, every upgrade is based on a model that isn't real. Every solution becomes a guess. Every change carries risk. And that's exactly what Red Bull walked into, without realizing it. At first. Because early on, they still trusted the system. They believed they could tune the problem out. Adjust it. Fix it through setup. But race after race, that belief started to disappear. Because nothing worked consistently. One session, slightly better. Next session, worse again. And that inconsistency is the biggest warning sign of all. Because it means one thing. The problem is not on the surface. It's at the core. And that's when Red Bull realized something they didn't want to admit. This wasn't just a difficult car. This was a car built on wrong assumptions. And that realization changes everything. And this is where the situation crosses the line from a bad car into a full technical collapse. Because once Red Bull accepted that the model was wrong, everything else started to fall apart. Because in Formula One, development depends on one thing above all. Trust. Trust in the data. Trust in the tools. Trust that when you change something, the car will respond exactly as predicted. But with the RB22, that trust was gone. Completely. Because the wind tunnel said one thing, the simulator confirmed it, and the track exposed something completely different. And that's the worst scenario any team can face. Because now, you don't know which version of the car is real. The one on the screen, or the one on the asphalt. And that confusion is what destroys development. Because every upgrade becomes a gamble. You bring a new part, expect it to improve performance, and instead, it makes the balance worse. That's exactly what happened in Japan. A new aerodynamic package, tested, validated in simulation. And when Verstappen drove it, the car became even more unstable, more unpredictable, harder to control. And that's when the situation becomes critical. Because now, the feedback loop is broken. You can't trust the data. You can't trust the upgrades. You can't even trust the direction. And that forces the team into the most dangerous position possible. Guessing. And Red Bull doesn't guess. That's not how they build dominance. That's not how they won championships. They were precise, calculated, always one step ahead. Now, they're reacting. Trying to understand a car in real time. During race weekends. Against teams that already know exactly what their cars will do. And that difference is everything. Because while Red Bull is searching for answers, Mercedes is refining. McLaren is optimizing. Ferrari is building on a stable base. And every race, the gap becomes more real, more visible, more difficult to close. But here's where the crisis goes even deeper. Because this isn't just about performance anymore. It's about identity. Because for years, Red Bull was the team that understood everything. Aerodynamics, balance, development direction. They didn't just build fast cars. They knew exactly why they were fast. Now, they don't. And that's what makes this moment so dangerous. Because once a team loses understanding, it loses control. Control of performance. Control of development. Control of the future. And that's exactly where Red Bull is now. Trying to rebuild that control from zero, in the middle of a season. And that leads to one inevitable decision. A drastic one. Not small fixes. Not gradual improvements. A complete change in direction. Because staying on the same path would guarantee failure. So they made the call. Abandon the model. Trust the track. Build the car based on reality, not simulation. And that sounds like the right move. But in Formula One, it comes with a massive risk. Because now, you're working with limited data, limited time, and no guarantee that what you're building will actually solve the problem. And that's where everything comes together. Because this decision leads directly to the most important moment of the entire season. Miami. The biggest upgrade package. The full reset. The attempt to save the RB22. But here's the truth. This is not just an upgrade. This is a gamble. Because if it works, Red Bull comes back, they rebuild confidence. They find their direction again. But if it fails, there is no second reset. No backup plan. No time left. Just one conclusion. That the RB22 was never going to work. And this is where everything becomes final. Because once Red Bull commits to this new direction, there is no going back. No safe option. No controlled recovery. Only one outcome. It works, or it doesn't. Because Miami is not just another race. It's a verdict. On the car. On the concept. On the decisions that created the RB22. Because for the first time this season, every major problem is being attacked at once. The weight. The balance. The aerodynamics. The instability. All of it changed together. A lighter car. A new floor. Reworked suspension. A completely different aerodynamic behavior. Built not from simulation, but from real track data. And that alone tells you how serious this is. Because when a team like Red Bull stops trusting its own tools, it means the situation is already extreme. But here's the danger. When you change everything at once, you don't get clarity. You get a result. If the car improves, you don't fully know why. If it fails, you don't know what caused it. And that makes the future even more uncertain. But they had no choice. Because staying on the original path would guarantee one thing: failure. So now, everything depends on what happens when that car hits the track again. Because if the RB22 suddenly gains half a second, that's hope. That's direction. That's proof that the concept can be saved. But if the gain is small, 0.2, 0.3, that's not enough. That means the foundation is still wrong. And if it doesn't improve at all, that's when the real consequences begin. Because at that point, the conclusion becomes unavoidable. The RB22 cannot be fixed. Not this season. Maybe not at all. And that's when the focus shifts. From recovery to survival. Because Formula One doesn't wait. While Red Bull is rebuilding, their rivals are moving forward. Mercedes, already ahead. McLaren, improving every race. Ferrari, stable and consistent. And that gap doesn't stay the same. It grows. And once it grows too much, you can't recover in the same season. That's when teams make the hardest decision. Stop developing the current car and focus everything on the next one. The reset, the rebuild, the future. But that decision comes with a cost. Because it means accepting defeat. Accepting that the season is lost. Accepting that the RB22 was a failure. And for a team like Red Bull, that's not just technical. That's emotional. That's political. Because this isn't just any project. This is the first car without Adrian Newey. The first car fully under Pierre watch. And if it fails, the consequences don't stay on the track. They move inside the team. Because Formula One always looks for responsibility. And right now, all of it points in one direction. The chassis. The concept. The leadership behind it. And that's why this moment matters so much. Because Miami doesn't just decide performance. It decides pressure. It decides stability. It decides the future of the people behind the RB22. Because if it works, Watch stabilizes everything. He proves the direction. He keeps control. But if it doesn't, the questions become louder. The doubts become stronger. And the decisions become unavoidable. Because this is how eras end in Formula One. Not slowly. Not quietly. But suddenly. When a team that once understood everything realizes it no longer understands its own car. And that's exactly where Red Bull stands right now. On the edge. Between recovery and collapse. And the only thing separating those two outcomes is whether this final gamble actually works.